good afternoon, happy lunch, happy day. How are you all doing? Good, great. Social is one of those areas where people are just excited to do it. So we're going to start with happiness and excitement about digital and social to get us started. I want to play a video for you that I think will start our day off pretty well. So here we go. And while this is playing, um, follow Halter Project at Halter Project on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. It's a great way to continue to stay connected with the folks that brought you out here so you can find out if they're doing other things. Just sounds like reciprocity to me.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be earthquake next Thursday.
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day.
I have no time for this.
So,
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
Yay. And that's what happens with every disaster, right? You get a ping on your phone, and that's how you know that something's going on until you start looking for folks to talk to, loved ones, people that work with you, et cetera, to talk about what are we going to do now, unless you already have a plan. So we're going to talk today about not only your organizational plan, but also your individual plan for preparedness and how you use digital and your phone, which is something you typically have with you in order to be prepared. Now, we will start by saying a hand crank radio is wonderful. Who has a hand crank radio? Y'all are the bomb. So most organizations and people that I speak to are all just, no hand crank radio do we have, and we don't expect to go and purchase one, and so we're relying on our digital connection, we're relying on our cell phone tower, and if that fails, then we're in big trouble. But we all know, because you have hand crank radios and because you are in the response arena, that it's important to be able to connect immediately following an event so that you understand what's going on and you're able to react in appropriate ways and also educate other people. And so I think one of the things that we learned from the California wildfires last year is that it's important to educate people properly, to give them the correct information so that more people can be safe, as well as the people in your families and households. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But I want to give you a little bit of background on how I got involved in digital and why this is an extreme passion for me. So I moved here about a year ago from Washington, D.C., after having worked at headquarters for FEMA for about 5 years in a lot of program areas. So I wasn't in external affairs at all, didn't do that type of work. I did more communications and policy analysis and work in recovery. And so some of you know what recovery is. That's our individual assistance and public assistance programs. Prior to that, I worked on the phone. Started on the phone immediately following Hurricane Katrina and talked to disaster survivors. And so I've been in the agency for about 13 years now and have spent most of my time in the program side of things. And so my family members and people in communities that were close to me and connected to me on social media would ask me all kinds of questions about how we do our business. And they really didn't care until something happened. They weren't very interested in the fact that I worked for FEMA until something went wrong. And then they were like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do with this? And there's someone who's like on the roof of their house and they need rescuing. How do I reach out to someone to help them? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Because as much as I was involved in emergency management, I didn't know all aspects of emergency management, and I definitely didn't know every bit of information as soon as a disaster happened. So there are firefighters, and there are police officers, and there are county agencies, and all these different people who are doing lots of things. But if I were to just go out on social media and look for it, or go out on their web pages and look for the information to convey to someone, unless I was getting tactical information, because I was sitting at an office or a recovery center like the RRCC or the NRCC that we manage once a disaster starts, I wouldn't have that level of detail to be able to tell someone how to evacuate their loved one from the top of a roof because there was flooding. And I hope that is an important point for all of you, because you are doing some of that work, and sometimes in your official capacity, you know the answer to that question. But how do you make sure that other people know the answer so that they can broadcast the message widely so that when people need things, they can get support and assistance? And it's extremely important when a disaster strikes because you don't want to give them the wrong information. So how terrible would it be if I gave them your number and said, oh, call Sonoma County. They'll help you. They seem to be really engaged and involved, and then their phones are clogged with people calling because I may have a following of 4,000 people, and they're all sharing the same information that I've just shared to this person on top of a roof. So fortunately, I had enough friends within the agency, people that I knew, to get the right answer to share with people. But a lot of well-meaning individuals don't have that. They don't know who to follow. They don't have the information to be able to share to ensure that people are safe when a disaster strikes. And so, show of hands, because you guys are star pupils because you all have hand crank radios. So let's see if we can continue this trend. How many of you follow your county government? Your state government? Your local fire station, local police department, on all of their channels. And for those of you who are in government, how many people are responsible for your social? Just shout it out. 1, 0, I heard 0. And so when we talk about social, we get really focused on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those types of things. I like to look at it more globally as digital. So what you post on your website, what you post, what you send via email, what you could post in various chat rooms and things like that, should all be consistent when you're sharing information. And I will let you know that at FEMA Region 9, which I'm sure everyone isn't happy for me to say this, but I am it for digital. So I'm up at the crack of dawn. I go to sleep whenever I get to go to sleep because I need to pay attention to not only what's happening here, but what's happening in Hawaii, what's happening in American Samoa, what's happening in Arizona, what's happening in Nevada, and all of our states. And it's not that we don't value digital within our agency, because we have a lot of people who support us at headquarters and do that type of work. But here specifically, we have a ways to go as far as making sure that we have enough people to support the digital footprint. And we're just talking about how we share information. We're not talking about how we respond to people who have questions and concerns and issues. And so while it's important to talk about the disaster once it happens or as it happens and how we reply at that point, I think the conversation has to start way ahead of time. So I'm really happy that you're here. I'm happy that I'm able to share some information with you, because when you walk out of here, I want you to have, one, a personal plan for how you will make sure that you have the right information to share with individuals, because you care about this topic, you care about people being prepared, and you will be motivated in the future to share accurate information. 2, I need you to be able to take some information back to your organization and possibly be ambassadors and supporters of that 1 or 0 person who is doing digital. So is anyone responsible for digital here? Awesome. Okay, so what, if any, are your challenges that you have with that?
I'm indirectly responsible as a disaster readiness coordinator. One of the problems we have is that there is so much what I'll call social media in our communities that everyone thinks they have the correct information. Everyone is posting it, tweeting it, so on and so forth. so that there's a lot of misinformation that gets out there, a lot of information that is old, that isn't taken down. That's a significant problem, and we're trying to find a way to bring it all together to one or two authorized sources.
So misinformation, information being out of date, and making sure that the authorized sources are the ones that are sharing the information. Anybody else?
For us, I think we have a handle on getting the message out for the most part, but kind of what you said around tracking and really being able to monitor what the community is saying, it just seems like you would have to be nonstop plugged into the matrix and constantly watching.
It absolutely is a matrix. And so there are a few things that we do in order to be able to not only share content effectively, but we also do some things to be able to follow what individuals are doing. So at the end of the day, within our joint field office component, we have a public affairs officer, an external affairs officer that makes sure that our message is consistent. So once a disaster is declared, and there's actually federal resources on the ground, there's one point of contact for our public information. Prior to that, all of the information should come through someone like myself, who's the public affairs officer for the region. And that helps us to ensure that even when we're coordinating with our headquarters office, that all of those messages come from me or have been touched by me, or I know what's going on, and that's the message that's going out into the universe. So that helps us quite a bit. But we also have to listen to the public, and we do this process called social listening. Is anyone familiar with social listening? 2 people. So we have a report that we put out on a daily basis about the disasters that we are supporting and monitoring. And the process for creating a social listening report entails the use of quite a few different pieces of technology, if you will. We use Hootsuite, and we use some other technology pieces just to be able to pull together based on hashtag, location, what people are saying about the disaster, where they have needs, where their questions aren't being answered, so that we can put together a report that's actionable for our operations folks so they know what they need to do. That process in and of itself for a large disaster, so if we're talking about a Sandy or a Katrina or any of the disasters that we had this past year, may take 4 or 5 people 4 or 5 hours to put together. And the reason why I say that is because when we're in this space where we think digital is easy or social is, oh, all you got to do is put a tweet out there and then we're good, right? Why haven't you tweeted faster? The social listening report informs what we share with the public, because then we know what questions they have. And it's impossible to know that just based on the experts who are in a room responding to a disaster, because they're not out there with the people. So yesterday we had a call with Hawaii, and there was a group who had posted something about the fact that they weren't receiving assistance, and they were out somewhere far away from the shelters and weren't able to get any support. And so we were able to share that message, and then our operations team was able to get somebody out there to them to help them with whatever their needs were. So the social listening component is extremely important. The other thing that I've seen, especially with this disaster in Hawaii, that I'd share as a good practice is that their team puts out a regular report based off of the data that their operations folks have, and it's just text. And it's just an update at 8 o'clock, at about 1 o'clock, at about 5 o'clock. Every day, they put out a text update on their Facebook page. They link that to their Twitter account, so that same information is on their Twitter account. They post that same update on their website as a blog post, basically, and then they link that. And so that is the most up-to-date information as of a specific date and time that they are pushing out to individuals. Much more effective than a long-form press release. Because if you're pushing out press releases on Twitter all day, who reads press releases outside of the people who do media? but you will look at a quick bulleted list of this is where you can't drive, this is what you can't do, this is what you need to do at this point to protect yourself from sulfur dioxide gas, this is what you need to do to protect yourself from ash. Thanks, have a great day. Because they're so nice on theirs. Like, it's thanks and have a great day at the end of each one. It is. Makes you feel all warm and fuzzy about the sulfur dioxide gas that is coming from the fissure up the street. And are their shelters still open? But they're pulling information from a lot of different resources because, as we know, when we go out into the field to man a disaster, there are a lot of players. There are a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And so being able to capture that information in a regular update is extremely important. And that doesn't really take that much, right? But then what they cannot do, and what they've asked our help to do, is they'll put out these blurbs. And if you look at the Hawaii County Civil Agency Twitter account, or if you look at the Hawaii EMA Twitter account, or the governor or the mayor and the information that they're sending these very short blurbs. So what I do is I add a picture to it, and I pull out some of the information from the blurb to make it a little bit more exciting. Because for whatever reason, social has gotten to the point where people want exciting. Like, they don't even, okay, you're about to, you're in serious trouble. There's a volcano, but unless there's a really cool image attached to it, you're not paying attention, right? You want a really great image to catch your attention and tell you, this is what I need to pay attention to. And so we're able to assist with that. And so you'll see FEMA, our main account from headquarters, share information. Now we have a cool, catchy graphic that says Hawaii, Kilauea, volcano, and people respond to that. Or we'll be able to take images from the disaster that the folks on the ground can't really get. So if DOD or someone else is out in the field capturing images, we're able to pull those images, attach them with an update or a message, and send that information out. So those are some of the ways that we do it. But it takes so much more than one person paying attention to the Twitter account or the Facebook account on a daily basis. We also have people that ask us lots of questions. They're like, is FEMA out there yet? Are you guys providing assistance yet? And what is that assistance? And what does it look like? Because you guys know, I know you know, but we don't always know in the community that FEMA doesn't come out until after you've started to do your work. So we may not be on the ground supporting disasters until way later. And people don't understand that, so they look to us for information. So one of the gaps in how we communicate via digital is that it's very challenging for individuals to know which accounts to follow locally. So here's an exercise. You know what county that you're in. You know what city that you're in. I'd like you to take your phones out. And if you haven't already, follow your county emergency management agency. And if you don't have one, follow your county. And is anyone having a hard time finding that? Sometimes the naming of counties is different. So in California, I've noticed it's county of whatever the name is instead of Sonoma County. In some other states, it's the name and then the county. Now, over the next week, I'd like you to figure out or decide if that's the best resource of information for a disaster. Because it's not always. Now, your emergency management agency, typically always. If there's an emergency, if there's a disaster, they should be sharing information. They should be retweeting information from county and local officials. If not, there may be another organization that does that. That could be your fire department. That could be your police office. It's different for each county. So everybody's done that? So now you're following them on Twitter. What happens when a disaster strikes? Are you always going to have access to cell phone service? So immediately after a disaster strikes, you'll have your hand crank radio and you'll have your, hopefully, cell phone service. But if you don't, then what would you do to get information from that Twitter account? Mobile updates. You can have Twitter updates go directly to text message on your phone. You can select that within Twitter. And I'll show you how to do it later, but we don't know if that's the one you want to get updates from yet. You'll be getting updates all day. You're like, oh no, I'm getting text messages from the county like every 2 minutes. And your county, your firefighters, your police department, your mayor will all encourage you, if they do have a text message service, to sign up for that. And those text message alerts will come directly to your cell phone as well. So those are two specific things that you can walk out of here and do and have more information about a disaster when a disaster strikes. And as long as you don't turn that off, you'll know something. You'll have some level of information. Now, we're going to talk about organizationally how you get ready before a disaster happens, which is what I promised you. Are there any questions so far? Yes.
I just feel like I'm basing all of this on the experience that I had last October, that a lot of us had during the fires. And I didn't know anything about what we call Nixle alerts until the week of the fires. And I'm now signed up for that and SoCo alerts. However, even now, when I get these Nixle alerts and these Sonoma County alerts, and during the week of the fires, I felt like they weren't very helpful. So is that just, are we just dependent on the information that we get, and you're saying we just need to take what we get and then figure out how to work with that?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. Take what you get? That's not the type of person that I am. That goes against every fiber of my being. I think it's important that as you're having conversations about improvement to your local agencies, that you have a conversation about information sharing. And when disasters happen, making sure that they have the resources to be able to share information. You don't want them to pull resources from the people who are helping you, right, to send you a tweet. Like, that's the most important thing. But you also need someone to be able to make sure that we're relaying good information. And I will tell you, it's not as simple as just copy and paste or just, writing a few lines about what's going on. You have to be sensitive to how people may perceive that information when they're panicking and make sure it's very clear. For instance, and I'll come to you. Oh, okay.
In those Nixle, sorry, In those Nixle alerts, do you click on the link that's in there, and it usually takes you to the bigger public announcement that gives you more information? A lot of people don't know that.
No, I did. I just feel like during the fires, especially, I live in Windsor, and fortunately we were untouched during the fire, but during the whole week of the fire, we were completely surrounded by it. And we did have TV, and we did have cell phones, some of us in our house, but we're watching all these broadcast reports, we're listening to the radio, we've got Nixle, we're tuning into everything we can, and all we're being told is where the fire's already burned, and we're wondering where the hell is it moving next? And we just couldn't get that information. We just couldn't get it. It was frustrating. I know this was a weird experience,
Mm-hmm.
and everything's going to be different, but it just makes me worried about in the middle of an earthquake or something like that. I just don't know how dependable these Nixle alerts are.
So what I will say to that is that we have to be very cognizant that when we share operational information, that we're not just sharing just this black and white data. Because most people are interested in how does this impact me? So you look at your operational information, and then you have someone who is kind of removed a little bit from the operational information to look at it and say, okay, if I were in your county at that point, this is what I'd be asking. Like, how does this impact me? Should I move this way? Should I move that way? Should I stay put? What have you? And that's your message. And I think what we're doing in trying to get information out, and this is a critique of FEMA as well, we are just pushing out information so that you have it because people have asked for it. But we're not necessarily tailoring that information to the needs of the individual because that is a time-consuming process. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes someone who's been paying attention to the questions that are coming in on social or the things that people are asking to be able to respond to. And honestly, it's more of a, not only an art form, but it's more of a technical specialty than people think. It's not just throwing up stuff on Twitter. And so having that lens is what we're going to talk about at this point, because I'm going to talk to you about how you can tell your organization's story. So this says Region 9. I just did this presentation within our agency because we have a lot of people who are sent out on disasters. They're doing all kinds of great work. And I want them to be involved and integrated in this social team of one to be able to share information ahead of a disaster, because it makes it a lot easier once a disaster strikes to be able to support the information needs of the public. So, public affairs. Where am I shooting? Old-fashioned way. Okay. So in the field, who's been in the field before when a disaster happens? Anyone? Awesome. So in the field, we have an external affairs officer, and we have individuals who work within that. And part of that organization is called a JIC, a Joint Information Center. And those are the people that do all the digital, all of the media relations. We talk to the media, those types of things. In my role as public affairs, I do all of those things. So when information comes in via the media, I monitor every day on Google News. Anyone have Google News? So I set up an update for all of the areas that we cover, all of the disasters that are going on, so that the news that is new and pressing from those disasters hits me every morning. So pretty early in the morning, I'm reading news clips about everything that's going on. It helps me to better do this job that we're going to be talking about. So media monitoring, clips and summaries. By about 10 o'clock every day, because we have a region that spans into other time zones, I send out an update that says, these are all the clips that I've seen today, and this is why it matters to you. Does everyone read the clips? No. But the information is available. So if on this day, you're deployed to a disaster or something's going on and you need to know what's going on, you can pull that clips and you'll know without having to read all of the news or set up those Google News alerts. But that's a great space for information, even for you as an individual. If a disaster happens and you happen to still have web connection and connectivity and all those types of things. Great way to get information about what's going on. News desk media inquiries. We handle all the inquiries that come in. We do release review and dissemination, so all of the releases that come in, we manage the web page, Twitter account, and other agency social pages. So we have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram page for FEMA, and we have a FEMA Region 9 Twitter account. So I'm going to give you an opportunity now to look up the @FEMA Region 9 Twitter account. Because the most up-to-date information that I'm going to share about who is actually the account to follow for a specific disaster, because I'll typically be retweeting them or sharing their information, is on that @FEMA Region 9 Twitter account. I don't manage the Facebook account daily, so I can put information on there when I need to, but that's not the space to get information from us. We also manage the people who go out and speak, our public message strategy, our National Preparedness Month and Shakeout. And the important thing about this slide is we do video and graphic image creation and coordination. So one of the best ways to get people's attention when a disaster strikes, and I've mentioned that before, is through great picture taking. So our leader, Brock Long. Does anyone know that? Anyone know Brock? No? He's so far in D.C. It's okay. Yes.
I have never done Twitter. How important is that? It seems like from what you're talking about today that it could be a very important tool.
Thank you. Great question. So Twitter is important because we can give you short snippets of information that doesn't drain a lot of your battery life very quickly and easily, and we're just pushing out updates. And those updates you can get via text message. You can use any platform, and you don't have to actually have an account on Twitter to follow people. You can go to the @FEMA Region 9 page without having a Twitter account and just look to see what the updates are, or your county's account. You can make bookmarks maybe on your within your phone, in your browser, to just go and check from time to time. But it's easier to just get the updates directly to your phone. You're welcome. So for us, it's better to use Twitter. That doesn't mean everyone else has to use Twitter. And these are the things that we're focused on this year: building a culture of preparedness, readying the nation for catastrophic disasters, and reducing the complexity of FEMA. When we talk about readying the nation for catastrophic disasters, one of those things is just making sure that you understand our role and the role of local government when a disaster happens. And that's part of the reason why we're here today, because we want to make this a more prepared and resilient nation. So it begins with you. And I shared this in this way with these photos because aren't these some pretty awesome photos that just kind of like draw you into the content? This is our regional administrator, Bob Fenton. Everybody know Bob? Yay, Bob likes to give hugs, so says The Onion, right? It's a newspaper article. They thought he gave good hugs. It was funny. We laughed about it a lot. But it begins with each individual member of your team. So the people who are a part of your organization are going to share the best information about what they're doing ahead of a disaster. So when I said earlier, follow the account that you think would share emergency preparedness information, you'll know that if they're talking about emergency preparedness stuff and what their staff is doing that's emergency preparedness related. So for those of you who have the opportunity to create the strategy for your organizations, I would suggest that you share information. You know, our emergency manager is out here learning about how to rescue horses when a disaster strikes, because that's really important, and this is why, and here's a link to the information. And that way you can start to get people prepared and understanding that this is the place to go for information when a disaster happens. You can share cool things like why you're here, like why you decided to work in emergency management. Because a lot of times the reason why people don't update social media pages is they don't know what to put on them when there's no disaster. And then there's no disaster for like 3 years, which we're very happy about. We're really psyched when the disaster doesn't happen. But they need content. They need to be able to keep people engaged and keep people following them. We decided to do something around Women's History Month. So we started highlighting different members of our staff and quotes and things that they said for Women's History Month. It's just something that we decided to do. You can do things however you choose to do them within your organizations. And we also talk about how we do it. So disability integration is really important to us. And some of you guys may know Roxy. She works in our external affairs division at Region 9. And we try to make sure that when we're out in the field that we provide services that are accessible to all of our citizens. So telling your FEMA story, it's really difficult when I'm back at the region and people are out in the field doing all this work to get really great imagery. Does anyone experience that? Like they send you a picture, like if you were to take a picture of me right now, it would be a really terrible picture because the lighting isn't good, right? But they'll send me that picture and they'll be like, post it. No, there were all these leaders in the picture and I'm like, but you can't tell who they are. No one's going to recognize themselves. And part of the reason why people will follow you or share or what have you is because it's a clear, inviting picture. So I encourage people to get really close. So if I were to take a picture of you guys, enjoying the seminar today. You would get right into the photo, like get in their face. Like that's the purpose of taking a photo, right? You're not gonna stand like way off in the distance. And it really helps as far as telling the story. So you can tell the story in a variety of ways, interactions with the public. So how have you guys interacted? What was the response that you got from the public? When you have presentations to the community, you can create a personal and professional digital presence. How many people in emergency management have a headshot? That is always such a big deal. It's so difficult to get people with a headshot. So I just decided I was going to go around and take headshots of people. We were on downtime so that when they needed to be featured in the newspaper or when they needed to go somewhere, I would have a nice, shiny, beautiful headshot of them. We're also doing a bio project where I help them to create their bios so that we'll have that information so that people know their background. We also are very cognizant of people's speaking ability and comfort with speaking. So as we do social engagement and we have a video presentation and it's right after a disaster and you need to tell people what's going on and you want to do like a Facebook Live or a taped video and post it on Twitter or what have you, who are you going to have to speak? Do you know in advance? Because sometimes your residents are going to be turned off, not pay attention, because the people that you have representing you don't maybe show empathy. That's a big one because they're so busy doing the work. They're not empathizing with the plight of the disaster survivors. So tips on videos. Okay, so here's the deal. I have multiple social media accounts. Does anyone have multiple accounts, like personal accounts? Yay, you guys are pros. Why? Why do you have multiple? No personal beliefs and biases into the work arena? Any other reason? Every channel has a different audience. So my account is @MediaBrandy. I have a ton of accounts. And Halter found them some kind of way and then got to my page. Because I created one when I became the public affairs officer. Some of you are leaders within your fire organization or police organization or what have you. And that's where I share information about FEMA. That's all I talk about is FEMA or FEMA-related things. I don't talk about my politics. I don't talk about what I ate for lunch. Ever so often, I'll share something that's kind of cool because I'm, oh, these are cool people in the emergency management arena. Public assistance, yay. But no commentary, no shade and sarcasm. It's a place where people can get information if they need it. And for those of you who are leaders in this space or even communicators, it's great to be able to practice your craft on your own page before you go manage someone else's page. You want to test out posting a video. Has anyone tried to post a video and it just didn't come out right? Yes. So you can test it first, and you can delete it on your own page before you then post it on the organization's page for all to see, before they've retweeted it 500 times, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it's gone out into the ether, and someone's going to call me. We had one of our folks in Florida, when I was out there doing digital, she posted a telephone number for people to call, and the phone number was off by like one number. And of course, it went to some really terrible place. And it was such a terrible thing, and she never lived it down, and we still talk about it all the time. She still has a job, but, you just want to try these things out beforehand. So these are some of the things that we're doing as support for our staff. We're doing headshots and bios. And we're keeping all of those things in really cool places so that other folks can access them. We're also doing story creation and amplification. So we can talk about a tweet, but sometimes 140 or now 240 characters isn't enough to be able to share the information that you're trying to get across. So there are other digital platforms to use. So you could use a blog. Like we talked about the fact that people can share information on a blog. Has anyone done a guest blog with someone who was impacted by a disaster or someone that was impacted by the service that you provide? It's a great way to amplify their story, their good news story about what it is that you've done in down times, but it's also a great way to amplify to share contacts. So for instance, recently we've been doing a lot with financial preparedness and making sure that people understand their financial responsibility following a disaster. Our administrator is huge on making sure that people know that they should have insurance, that they should have savings and things like that when a disaster happens, because FEMA assistance is not going to get to you, one, fast enough, nor is it going to be enough to be able to cover your disaster losses. Some of you guys live in homes in this area that far exceed the amount that we would be able to provide to you from FEMA assistance alone or even from an SBA loan. And so in order for us to help people to prepare, we have to be honest and share that information. And so we've been doing a lot of prep talks and things like that with other experts who share their experience of helping people to get financially prepared for a disaster. So those are some of the things that you can do in downtime that will help people to be prepared. But when a disaster strikes, so disaster happens tomorrow, and my friend just came over to my house, was really upset. Her house has been lost to flooding or to lava flow or to an earthquake or what have you. Capturing her response and what she's thinking right then is so powerful. And then being able to give either advice or information that can help people is extremely, extremely powerful. And we were able to use that with the Halter Project because we were able to share a video after the California wildfires to show how the information that we shared last year was helpful for people as they prepared for disaster. We talked about our tips. So this is one of the posts that we've shared in peacetime. This got quite a few responses and likes and things of that nature just because of the type of an image it was and because there were people who understood what this contraption was. And what was explained to me at the beginning, and this is a good way to talk about how you can change the information that was given to me. This is called a gator. And I was like, what does gator mean? Because I'm from Louisiana, and that sounds like alligator. They're like, no, it's a GATR. I said, but what does GATR mean? Oh, that's just the acronym. But what does the acronym mean? It didn't have anything to do with what it was. But they wanted me to post that on Twitter. If I didn't know what it was, and I work in emergency management, would you know what a gator is? You would say, oh, it's a big round thing that they're putting together. So change that talking point, and you can do the same thing with the operational information that you get. Change it to something that makes sense. So our incident management assistance team members are responsible for setting up a portable, inflatable satellite communication system. That's what a gator is. And they have to do it in 60 minutes. Whoa, that's kind of cool. And I might know somebody in the photo. Okay, I'll retweet that. And it's Monday Motivation. So we're following and being a part of the hashtag that's going on Mondays because we posted this on a Monday. So does anyone know how to find the hashtags that are trending on Twitter? Okay, I'm going to show you that. So on each day, there are lots of hashtags that are going on. And typically after a disaster, someone comes up with a hashtag that everyone then starts using, right? So we try to incorporate as many of those as possible because if I am looking for disaster information, I'm looking for hashtag Kilauea or hashtag California wildfires or hashtag CA fires. There were a lot of them that were being used at the time. Hashtag Sonoma, hashtag Napa, hashtag we're mad, hashtag we're happy. They're just all types, right, of hashtags. But in order for you to get in the conversation, for other people to see you, this hashtag is important. And you can use it on Facebook, you can use it on Instagram, you can use it on Twitter. And if you were to look up the hashtag in a browser, it would pull up all kinds of information that was associated with that hashtag. So if you wanted to get updates, you could find them. But on Mondays, people do Monday motivation. So they do some type of inspirational quote. And if you really like social media, you might just look up Monday motivation, and you would also find something from FEMA. And then maybe you would start to follow us. So that when a disaster struck, you'd be following us at that point, right? So that's the reason why we use them. I love this one. So this was National Puppy Day. And before children, and maybe it's not before children, but people like dogs and children, especially dogs and babies. And it's hard to incorporate babies into disaster management, but we can incorporate puppies. And so this is a picture of someone's puppy. And so we said Happy National Puppy Day to all of the Region 9 puppies that are ready for disasters and the owners who prepare them. Hashtag West Coast, hashtag Pet Life Jacket Swag, hashtag Friday Feeling. So Friday Feeling is one of those Monday motivation types of hashtags that was trending on that day, so we incorporated that. This hashtag is just because it was cool. This hashtag is because we primarily support people on the West Coast, and we got 242 views on my LinkedIn page. When people are supposed to be working and they're like, I'm on LinkedIn. So this goes to show that LinkedIn is another great space to be able to share information about what's going on when a disaster strikes, because those people will then share the information as well. And so I talk a lot about the disasters that we have and tips and things like that. LinkedIn is very much underutilized. And so if you are a PR professional, digital professional, please friend me on LinkedIn, or it's not friend, connect with me on LinkedIn, because I share jobs, I share all types of information that you might be interested in. So, when a disaster strikes, what do I do now? So, does everyone have paper? I've seen you guys taking notes. So let's talk about what we're going to actually do, because this is all before a disaster happens, just to make sure you've got people that are paying attention when you start tweeting or sending messages and all that type of stuff. So clean sheet of paper. We're going to come up with your plan, if you will, for what you would do when a disaster strikes. So what's the first thing that we're going to do personally? Get yourself safe. Don't tweet from a space of deficiency. So get yourself safe. Get your family safe. Does everyone have a communications plan for your family? So, if a disaster were to strike today while we're sitting here, because while I was here, when I was looking at my phone earlier, there was a big ash eruption at Kilauea, and I missed retweeting it because I was not focused, right? That's how quickly something could happen that could impact people that you care about. So do you know, because I have family all over the country that I care about, like my core family, do you know where you would meet or how you would communicate if you didn't have cell phone service? Are all of your friends and family on Facebook? Are all of your friends and family on Twitter? Are all of your friends and family on LinkedIn? That's most probably not likely. Instagram? Pick one. Create a family list, family group. All the members of your family in the same group. So you can say, hi, I'm okay. Hi, I just made it out of the city. Hi, this is going on, because I couldn't get access to internet until I got out of the city to communicate with you, but this is the way I'm going to say I'm okay, is in this Facebook group. They can be as big or as small as you want them to be. I'd also suggest you have an email listserv of your family members. We don't keep track of our family members' emails, do we? But have it quick. Like have just a group list that you can send messages out to everybody so that everyone knows that they're okay. It's just basic family plan. You know you have to take care of the kids and go pick them up. You know grandma is not on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, but at least everyone else is clear. And there's hopefully someone that can reach out to grandma and make sure that she's okay. So once that's done, then what? Put your cats in the carrier. So a lot of our shelter facilities that FEMA pays for, we don't necessarily manage them, allow for pets to be there. But only certain pets, I was told. I don't think we allow turtles. Or just certain pets that we don't allow. I have to get you guys a list because I was really amazed by the pets that we do allow and the pets that we don't allow. So if there's a pet that you have that's not like a dog or a cat or a cute little fuzzy bunny rabbit, then we need to make sure that they're okay and taken care of. What else? You have to have a go bag.
While you're talking about this, how do you integrate what you do with the Red Cross? Because they have their own shelters, or do they not? Are they part of your system?
So Red Cross shelters typically get money from us. Most shelters, when a disaster happens, are funded through us, but we don't manage them. So we have information. They're part of the National Voluntary Organizations Assisting in Disasters, which is also called National VOAD, NVOAD. It's a group of nonprofit organizations that most of them have some type of a memorandum with us on what types of services they can provide and what, if any, contractual obligations we have to provide payment for those services. So we typically know which shelters are open and how many people are there and whether or not more shelters need to be open, but we don't specifically manage them. So you need a go bag. What's in your go bag? Medicine, clothes, prescriptions, cash. What if the ATM doesn't work? Documents, your birth certificate, your passport, birth certificates for all the other people in your household that forgot their birth certificates, for all of those responsible people in the room. Medicine is huge, though. Medicine, sanitary products, and hygiene products that you might not have out in a shelter.
So I manage the Bodega Bay shelter for the firestorm, and we had 3,000 evacuees just show up in like 6 hours. And I would have to tell you that not one of them had a go bag. And most of them left so quickly that they didn't even think about grabbing their driver's license or any information. And it's nice to have a go bag, but have a go bag in the car too, is what we keep trying to say. And have blankets as well, you know, in your car, because if you're coming to the coast, it was 32 degrees and they were freezing, sleeping on the asphalt in the parking lots, on the beaches, and nobody was prepared. It wasn't even part of some of the culture to even think of preparing for a disaster of that kind.
And how long were they there?
Some a few days, but we provided shelter and food, including tents and camping gear, for 2 weeks.
So typically with people in my family, I try to encourage them to be prepared for 3 days at least of food, water, a change of clothes because you're going to be tired of the t-shirt you left in or what have you in that bag, if at all possible. And one of the things that our administrator has stressed, and I know this to be true, some people are not financially prepared to have go bags everywhere. But if they're running out of the house, take the tuna, take the granola bar, take a bottle of water, take a t-shirt and some old tennis shoes, those types of things. So don't, as we talk about these go bags, I think it's important to ensure that we understand that not everyone is going to be prepared, and it could be your old going outside and weed eating clothes, just to have something else. Okay, so you've got a go bag, you're heading out, you're getting away from the disaster, you don't have access to cell phone service, but you have your hand crank radio, which is giving you most probably operational and logistic information, which roads are open and closed, right? Those are the types of things that you should be able to get on your hand crank radio. Does everyone know which station to tune into on your hand crank radio? Yes, one. I would not know that, depending on the area that I'm in. I've moved a lot for work. I wouldn't know. That's something that you need to add to that list of the things that you're going to do. Yes.
I would recommend putting the call numbers on a little sheet of paper or some sort of sticky and sticking it to the actual radio
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't panic and don't know where to go.
Call numbers on a sticky on the radio. Awesome idea. Awesome idea. The other thing that I do that is maddening for my the people that I work with is I keep notes. It's most probably not the best place to keep them, but I keep so many notes on my phone. So I keep like a running note. So there's a disaster note on my phone. So disaster happens, there are phone numbers that we have at FEMA that we're supposed to call that will allow us to have access to a line when other people don't have access. Those types of things are on my phone because the PowerPoint that they gave me or the little document that they gave me, I may not have when a disaster strikes. But if I have juice, then I'm good. So you also want to have chargers and things like that, right? So when you get to an area where you can use your phone, you're going to let everyone know that you're okay. And then we're starting to get into the space where you're okay enough to care about other people, right? Because you're not immediately handling everyone else's stuff, right? Or are you that selfless? When you work for a rescue, yes. But if you're in that space, then that's your job. Mm-hmm. But as individuals, most probably not. So then you're out. You're able to help people. Where are you going to get information to help people with? And there are no wrong answers, but this is typically where we mess up. Getting it from the sheriffs. Anyone else? All channels, county, city sheriff. But do you really do that? Let's be honest. What are we really doing? She does.
I mean, I'm in the fire rescue service, but I would imagine most are looking out their windshields going, what's going on? And that's where they're going to come up with their own conclusions and start posting.
I'm driving down the street, Facebook Live. Look, there's smoke. Oh my gosh, it's overtaking everything. You don't even know if it is or not, right? The people in Hawaii keep telling us this volcano is a very small part of the Big Island. We want everyone to know this is a very small part of the Big Island, but when you see it on television, like Hawaii is in flames. The whole state, all islands are in flames. So some of that is going to happen, but you also need to get correct information. So what's the best place to get correct information? Is it through the media? That's typically what you're listening to, right? You're listening to the radio, you're watching television if possible, or you're getting media feeds on social media. You're getting a news update from ABC News. Sometimes they get it wrong. And guess who they have to get the information from? Mm-hmm. Verified. And they have to figure out who they are too. Because as I told you earlier, we don't always know exactly who to go to. So they call me first. They're like, it's FEMA. Y'all are already out on the ground, aren't you? No, we're not. Why don't you try Cal OES? And Cal OES says, why don't you try Sonoma County? Because that's actually a county where it is. You should talk to their folks. And then their PIO is like, oh my gosh, my phone keeps blowing up. Can't get to everyone fast enough. And sometimes the story will go out with the best information that they have, but it's not the most up-to-date information that you need. So that's when the digital component of those local agencies is extremely important to share those updates. And to be honest with you, as I'm tweeting and posting information and making sure that our briefing points are right, I get it directly from Hawaii County Civil Agency. Because anything else could be wrong. They know what's happening on the ground in their area.
So we had a situation here in the North Bay fires where there was unofficial information on, for instance, a Word document that kept getting updated, and it turned out to be the most accurate, most reliable, timely information, and it was kind of an underground, so to speak, where people were looking to that, and the fairgrounds in Petaluma were included in that for where to take horses and so on. So it was an unofficial, but it was really one of the key sources of information that people could quickly post and change. So how does that play? It was a Google Doc, so, okay, thank you. Yeah, so that was unofficially official.
So here's the blurry part, and this is what Julie and I were talking about beforehand. There are lots of Facebook groups that popped up after the wildfires, and I was desperately trying to get involved in the Facebook groups, but they were like, yeah, you don't even live in our area. We're not letting you into the group. We don't know you, right? After a disaster, when the group is created, they're like, who are you? Because I don't have public affairs officer on my Facebook page. That's just not how I roll. So it was interesting to see that there was some information that was very credible that was being shared, and that was, in my opinion, very helpful for people. But there was also information that was wrong. And in order to counteract that, I think your track record is important. So as you start to figure out, okay, this information is right, yes, maybe that is a great credible source. But the best credible source is the source of information. So we've been talking a lot within FEMA about our pages, because we've created pages for states and for disasters when they're really out of control. We chose not to create a California page or a California wildfire Facebook page, because then we have to maintain that. And again, it's me. But not all of our local folks have the resources to be able to maintain and manage information sharing. And so we have to temper the two. And to be honest with you, Sonoma County, in my opinion, was good about sharing information. They had a great page and information was being updated. But it took a little while to get that ramped up, because that's what happens after a disaster. It's crazy. Things are going haywire, and they can't do everything immediately. You can't expect them to do everything immediately. So you have to temper the two. And while I would love to say, hey, if there's a great Google Doc out there, use it, I would prefer you use the official information. And share it yourself. Like, now you're empowered. You have information. You know where to get the information from. You know how to figure out which accounts to follow and those types of things. So create a group today with all of you guys. And fact check and share information about what's going on until someone else does it. Because honestly, the first 3 days of a disaster, we're leaving it up to you. And as terrible as that sounds, it is the truest thing. So we don't have the resources. We can't get people to you fast enough. If we were to pre-deploy resources because there was a hurricane that was coming, we could see it. Or we could see areas where a flood was going to happen. We can't see necessarily where the next big earthquake is going to happen. We've got to react and respond to it, even with our best laid plans. So if you want to be friends with me on Facebook, you can. I'll join your groups. I reply to things and say, I don't think that's a good idea. There were some things that I shared that people found valuable, but it's just the time to be able to do it. So getting the information from the official sites is important. So you're sharing information on the official sites. Then what? Is there anything after that? Because the disaster is continuing and there are lots of different things going on. Yes.
That concept of the social listening is so critical. That's something that we do. I run a radio station in Point Reyes Station that reaches us all the way into Sonoma County, and we were very cognizant of where our signal goes, but we were also monitoring a lot of other sources of information and trying to make sure that, and working together with our other partners locally to make sure that we were able to listen and figure out what was not correct, and not to put that on the airwaves, and not to, put bad information out there. So I think the social listening and sort of triangulating all that stuff is really critical.
It's really important. So one way that you can find out if people are real, because typically people are different than me and they like to put that they're the public affairs officer on their Facebook page. You can look at their page and see what it says about them. You can look them up on LinkedIn and see what their credentials are. You can look on their Twitter page and see how many followers they have and what types of stuff they've shared before. Reuters reached out to me when we were talking about Hawaii, and I'm using a lot of Hawaii references because it's fresh in my mind, but also because I don't want anyone to get mad at me because I say something about California. That would not be good. So I don't have to be as guarded. But anyway, in California, no, in Hawaii, Reuters reached out to me and said, hey, there's this person who posted a report from FEMA online. I was like, what are you talking about? They were like, can we get information like that? No, you may not. Can you share what information they posted? And so they shared it with me, and it was an internal report that someone had taken from our internal briefing, taken a picture of it, and posted it on social media. And so Reuters was like, you have more information. I know you do, like you're holding out on us. I'm like, that's our internal report. I can't share that with you. I can, massage things and send stuff out, but I can't share that with you. And so there's someone who's doing that. And you would think that they work within the agency, they know what's going on. They may just be on a email listserv or something like that. Yay, FEMA just posted. Here we go. Here's a great example. So, verified accounts, this little check on Twitter. This is a Twitter page for those of you who aren't familiar. Verified accounts will have this little check here. So you'll know if it's a verified organization. Not everyone has verified accounts, though. So you're going to want to look at things like how many tweets they have. You can scroll through their page and see what types of information they've been sharing, how many people are following them, the number of followers, things of that nature will help to give you an idea of their credibility. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So FEMA is going to be following, and FEMA Region 9 definitely is going to be following all of the accounts that have official information. We're typically not going to follow anyone who's shade tree. It's sharing crazy randomness. So, I'm missing meetings, okay. So FEMA just posted, Hawaii, here's what to do if you're in an area with volcanic ash. It's safe to do so. Continue to follow Hawaii EMA for updates, #Kilauea. So #Kilauea gets us into the stream of what's going on with the Kilauea volcano. Following Hawaii EMA is the Emergency Management Agency for the state, which is going to give you the most up-to-date information at that point. And then this is the graphic that we created that helps to signify to people, hey, this is information about the volcano. We try to put as much information as possible in the actual tweet. So whether you individually are sharing information or whether you're sharing information for your organization, if you have a link to something, 9 times out of 10 in a disaster, I'm not going to your link. I don't have the time. It's going to, there's going to be this little time scroll, whatever. I may not get there, but the basic information needs to be in that tweet. What do you want me to do? What action do you want me to take? Or why should I follow the link, right? Those are things that are important to share in your post. So we're grabbing information from the talking points, but we're also consolidating it to be able to share it here. Here on the left are trends for you. And you can see these on your phone as well. So if you're looking for hashtags that are trending, these are the ones that are trending. And that helps you to know how you can get into the flow of conversation. Typically, right after a disaster strikes is when people are paying the most information to digital. There's a slope. So we'll be here on digital posts. We might be at hundreds of thousands of posts about Kilauea right now. And it's going to slowly decline. So over the coming days, people aren't going to pay attention anymore. They're paying attention now. So this is the best time to give them preparedness information. This is the best time to get into their brains about what they would do if a volcano hit. Cal OES has been doing a good job about saying, hey, we have that could happen here too. So please pay attention. These are some things that you could do. Because the information desire is really high right now. And there are also people like Will Boer. So Will Boer is our FEMA spokesperson at headquarters, kind of similar to me. And so there are people who follow him to get up-to-date information about what's going on as well. And so there are people who are adjacent to your organization that, if possible, should actually have a platform where they're sharing information, because people may know their name. They may not even know your group, but they may know that person because they've been out in the field talking to them, and they'll look for information from them as well. So we've got a lot of notifications, which are always fun. Let's see what people are saying today. Debris operations. So we've been talking a lot about debris operations. Here is a good example of all of the Twitter handles that we typically follow and tag in photos when we post something from FEMA Region 9 that has to do with the wildfires. So if we tag County of Sonoma, they're likely to retweet it. If we tag County of Santa Barbara and all these others, then they're likely to retweet the information. And that's one way that you can let someone know, hey, there's something that we just posted, and it'll pop up on their phone and they'll be able to look at it. So if you want the American Red Cross to know what you're talking about, you're going to look for the American Red Cross in your area and tag them, or at them. That's what we call it. I'm going to use the @ sign. And then share whatever it is that you want to share. And typically, we will respond to all of the posts or the questions that people have, unless it's something like, all of you are trying to take over the world. Diane Summerfield, where are you? Yay! Diane is tweeting. And because she added FEMA Region 9, I can see it. So I'm going to say, yay, we love this. Retweet. Diane. Let's see. So Forrest Landing is one of our volcano experts. So he's been posting a lot of information about the disaster, which is a good example of how some of your folks can be involved in the conversation and highlight things that we can then retweet. But I'm looking for somebody who doesn't like us, because some of these things I don't reply to. Aw, thank you so much for sharing this useful tip in order to protect the greater good. Yay, we like you. I saw one the other day. But the important part of this, and I'm not going to belabor this, but the important part of making sure that you're actually paying attention to the notifications is that's where you can correct misinformation. So if they reply to @FEMA Region 9 and say, oh, this is poppycock, you shouldn't follow this information, you can reply and say, no, this is something that's important. And the correction is just as important as you sharing information, because that person is motivated to share that information. They feel like you are wrong, and their followers need to know that this is the correct information. I posted one time about the earthquakes and the fact that people should have, does anyone know that if an earthquake happens, you should put the pillow over your head if you're in the bed at night? Because that's the best thing that you can do, is put a pillow over your head to protect it from falling objects. They thought that was the funniest thing. Like, it was retweeted so many times because they were like, FEMA Region 9 is out of their mind. Somebody crazy must be tweeting for them, because why would they put that? Well, if you're in the bed, that's the best thing you can do, right? They didn't like it. But it was great for us because it was retweeted all over the place. And you can use tricks like that too. Make things somewhat sarcastic. Yes?
How do you avoid the back and forth and argument and, like on Twitter? I mean, Facebook, it's like, right.
She said put a pillow over your head. You have to have a very mature person manage your social media sites, because there's a point when I'm not responding to you anymore. So our administrator is big about us making sure that we share the correct story. So we will correct, but once that's done, like I'm done. Or I will direct message you. I will invite you to follow us. I'll follow you, and then I'll send you a message offline. Because there was one young lady who was very upset about the flood maps in her area, and she was like going to town. I'm tagging Bob, I'm tagging Brock, I'm tagging FEMA, I'm tagging every FEMA region, even though the issue was in FEMA Region 9 with her mapping question. And so I took her offline, talked to her in direct message, got one of our experts to reply to her to get the information that she needed, and then sent it to her. Because I'm very much interested in making sure that people get the answer that they need. But there's certain information that I can't even provide to you on social because of wonderful 3 letters, PII, personally identifiable information. We are not allowed as the federal government to talk about individuals' cases online. So when someone asks, well, I applied and here's my registration number, can you look it? I can't look it up, and I need you to call. So having that level of information, I think, is extremely important in being able to respond. But there's a point when you just have to say, forget it. Any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to show you what I like about Hawaii that you can also do. So here's an update that's kind of in blog form about what types of respiratory protection are most effective against volcanic ash. Basic information that I think is beneficial, and so we're able to copy this link and shorten it. Everyone knows how to shorten a link? You can use Bitly, you can use Hootsuite to shorten a link, because this will take up, where I just highlighted, that will take up like your whole tweet. But I want them to be able to go back to this information. This is most probably in the weeds, but you can shorten the link so that you can add it to a tweet. There's another thing that I really like. So the Hawaii Tourism Authority is really concerned that tourists won't come to the rest of the island. You guys had some of that here. Wanted to make sure people were still coming to wine country as quickly as possible. And so we got some input from the business community that was like, okay, we need to hurry up and make sure that people understand what they can and can't do and places they can and can't go here. And so they've shared some information with us here that we've incorporated into our talking points. But I will tell you, in the mornings I do media clips. I then go to the websites that either I've been sent or that I know to go to, so I have a lot of things bookmarked. And then I go to the pages. So this is the County of Kauai. And I will have so many web pages up all day, going back and forth between all of the county pages, the social media pages. I typically don't do Facebook on my laptop. I have a Mac. So I'll have like this, I'll have my Mac, I'll have both my phones, because I'm constantly going back and forth looking up, is this the right hashtag to put? Is this the right handle to put? Because whatever I'm sharing at FEMA Region 9, people take as truth. So I need to make sure that it's the most accurate information, that there hasn't been another update that came out or what have you. And so to put together one tweet, to find an image for it, to find the correct information, to make sure it's accurate, may take me 30 minutes or more. Just depends on what we're talking about. So it's not necessarily a quick process, but if you don't have the resources or the staff to be able to do that, you can just post text. Just make sure the text is accurate and make sure the text is spelled correctly, because that will turn people off and they'll stop paying attention, which is amazing to me, because it's like, okay, they made a misspelling, but they were going to save your life later. You should still, you should still pay attention. But Kauai was impacted by the floods, and so I follow them for Kauai-specific things. And the point that I'd like to make with this is the fact that there are two disasters going on in Hawaii right now. There's the volcanoes, and there are the floods. Just like in California, there was the northern wildfires, and then there were wildfires in the south. And we had to make sure that when we were messaging, that we were making sure that they were separate. And a lot of people didn't do that. So a lot of people were like, oh, California wildfires, this is the latest information. Well, there are people in the north that think you're talking to them, and you're not, because their wildfires are over and subsided. So making sure that you're clear in your messaging is extremely important. And you can use hashtags for that, or you can make sure that your language says that. So, okay, so you have a plan for yourself. You have a plan for sharing information. So when you're in these groups with other folks, how do you correct people when they're wrong? Very nicely. Why do you correct them very nicely? Because you're a nice person? That's one. It's a better way of doing things to get your point across, because they'll think you're credible and they won't listen to you if you don't. The other part of that, which I think is important, is people are in shock and they're dealing with all kinds of emotional things because they've lost things that were very close to them. And so you have to be very cognizant of that when you're sharing the messages too. But it is still important to correct them, because if you don't, they're going to then share that with all of their friends who live around them.
I'm in Sonoma Valley, and in the first 5 hours from 1 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the morning, when we got to the hospital, we learned that the northern end of Sonoma Valley had totally burned down to the ground. And so this information was circling around. So with my family that was in Ventura County, the use of hashtags was extremely helpful. And there was a Ventura County PIO who built up trust and credibility, within the first moment. So from when that fire started, even though it raged so quickly, maybe they learned from Sonoma County, but how they got that information and shared it was far more accurate than what we were dealing with up here. So I agree with that accuracy thing. And if things are wrong, you've got to take steps to correct it quickly, because so many people are going to make a left when they should have made a right.
Yes, and sometimes because it's so easy to share, it's gone. They've already shared it. You'd have to delete the tweet or delete the post where they can't refer back to it anymore. If it's that inaccurate, that's sometimes what you have to do. Yes.
We're in a very small community, and we know we've actually partnered up with one individual person who is not official in any way, but has a huge following, very good at social media, and likes to post verified information as well as sort of sensational stuff to keep the interest going. And and Instagram and on Facebook, and has a real following. In fact, that was one of the places where you can scan, because you can actually pick up a lot of extra information and fill in the gaps from the comments on that person's page. But one of the things that we're working to do is put together some kind of an education for the community, sort of a campaign to know where to go for verified information. We just put a page on our website for the radio station that has several of these official Twitter feeds embedded, so that people can go and become used to looking at those, and then have the PG&E outage number and just enough information so that that's a good resource, and it's also active because it's updating with those Twitter feeds. And we're just, anything you can say about how to educate people who have their heads under rocks and just want sensation, it would be helpful.
I just wanted to add that we're a small community, but we're a number of communities that get a lot of visitors. And so we're trying to go at it from the other end to tell people, when you find something on a social media or digital information, don't necessarily trust it. Go to what we're putting out. And that's the whole education process.
So the education process is just going to have to be, you're going to have to just continue to reinforce it. I think the fact that business owners now understand more the importance of having correct information when a disaster strikes, they'll be helpful in making sure that they're sharing the appropriate information. As far as people who like to share sensational information and have huge followings, that's most probably why they have a huge following. Media Brandy doesn't have a lot of followers. And it's because I'm not saying anything sarcastic or bad about FEMA, because I work there. So I think it's just important to just continue to reinforce it. I don't know if there's a magic bullet, but if it were me, and I don't think that I would do it from the official at FEMA Region 9 page, but if I saw something that wasn't accurate, I would call it out from at Media Brandy. So I would reply to them. And you can put a dot in front of the @ sign for someone else's Twitter handle so that all their followers will get it. So, period, at FEMA Region 9, don't do this. And then your post. So, period, and then the @ the handle, whoever it is, and then type what it is that you have to say. And we could talk for hours about strategy. And I will tell you, I have gone to Georgetown for a digital certification, a social media certification. Like, you can get very deep into digital if you choose to. But the basics of it are just communicating with the public effectively and sharing consistent, solid messages. And if you do that, the other data analysis and all those types of things are really handy and spiffy and wonderful when you have the people to do all of that stuff. But in the meantime, you'll at least get effective information out when a disaster strikes so that people know what they need to do. And that's the purpose of us being here and talking about this. If you do have an organization and you'd like to get some feedback or some support, I think we're going to be doing some type of a digital session where we can like break down groups and we can talk more in depth about how you would use the platforms to monitor. For instance, on Facebook, if you were to go to Facebook right now, I'll give you this tip that may be beneficial to you since we've talked a lot about Twitter. If you go to your Facebook account and you look at these newfangled things, there's a search at the top of your Facebook screen. Typically on any page that you're in, there's a search. And instead of putting just the name of something, let's put hashtag Kilauea. And you can see it's just going to come up for you. In the search. You're going to use a hashtag and whatever. You could do hashtag California wildfires right now if you wanted to. because there are groups that are associated with that. And at the very top of your screen, it will say posts, people, photos, videos, pages, places. Does everyone see that? The top of your screen? And so you see photos. So if you needed to grab a photo, even though I want you to give credit to whomever did this photo if you're going to use it on your Twitter page. You can pull up photos, you can pull up videos and look at them, you can share them. You can pull up pages that are associated. So this is how I figure out when there are groups associated with the disaster that I need to join so that I can do appropriate listening for those groups so that I know what their issues are. Then there are public posts. Now, you know that personally you can keep your posts private, so your Facebook posts don't have to be available to everyone. That's a great tool. It's also kind of hard if I'm trying to help you, but it's an important tool to have. But if you're within the group, then typically I can see what information is being shared there if I'm a part of the group. So you'll see USGS volcanoes, excellent resource for volcanoes. There are links, groups, posts from groups. So if your post is public and it's in a group, Dizzy Jean McAleer posted in Sonoma and Napa fires, may we keep in humble hearts those who are seeking immediate emergency shelter from harm's way. This person has 25 people who have replied to her message and 2 comments, and she shared some information on May 15th. This is a person that I may go deeper and figure out, now who is this? What agency do they work for? Are they interested in sharing information? And if they're sharing information to a lot of people, especially if we're talking about hundreds or thousands of people reacting or replying to them, then they may be a person that I would send a message to and say, hey, this is an official resource for you to use. Or here's a link to something that may be helpful to you as you're sharing information. And then there are related searches, so other searches that maybe you should look at that you didn't think of at the beginning. As we start to do social listening, we actually come up with a list of hashtags and a list of things that we would ask about a disaster if we were impacted by them to start to use that to search social media. And that's how we start to find out what people are saying. So when we say listening, we're not just going, because my feed isn't going to tell me anything about what's going on with the California wildfires, because I don't have enough friends who are impacted by it. But if I search, then I'm able to get the information that I need. And if you hit any of those categories at the top, then you can go directly to the information that you want. You can also bookmark a post or a page. So on Twitter, there's a new bookmarking feature. If there's a tweet or something that you want to keep, hold on to for later, you can bookmark it. And you can do the same thing on Facebook. And I use that to then go back and pull a list of all of the things that I think are important for my superiors to know or for people to act on later. So, I am Brandy Richard, the FEMA Public Affairs Officer. If you guys have questions or want more in-depth information about how we use digital to effectively communicate before and after a disaster, I'm definitely here to be a resource for you guys as you share information successfully with the community, because you are the help until help arrives. You're the people who are going to be on the ground sharing information with your communities before we can even get out there. So I appreciate you guys having me. Are there any last questions that anyone has? Are we good? We're good. Yay!
She is awesome, and we really appreciate Brandy making the time to drive over here from Sacramento before she takes the red eye to get to Washington, D.C., and to FEMA Region 9 for allowing us to have her share all her wisdom today. And so I want to thank everybody here. I think this is just an amazing cross-section of our North Bay communities, and if everybody in this room could work together in the next disaster to get information out and be trusted messengers, wouldn't that be an awesome thing? So. And we have dessert.